What's up, y'all? I'm glad you're here with me, and I'm glad to be here with you. Now, I did tell you I was going to teach you some things, or learn you a few things about some art. This is a video about 1-point perspective. In the future, I want to make videos about 2-point, 3-point, and even give you other perspective tips. But first, we got to get in the ring.
Honestly,
So let's get into it.
can't say how I'm feeling inside. I wanna be sealed, but got too much pride. I wanna be sealed, but I really heal. Don't really like heal, but I tell you I tried. I did everything else but cry.
But anyway, I do want you to know I am not a teacher, and I probably should have read up some more properly on how to teach you perspective. But when it comes to, 1-point perspective, the two things you really need, well, not two things, there's a few things you do need to understand. If you understand your shapes, you may have the advantage. And I'd also say depth. Because once you know how objects kind of behave at certain distances, it's almost self-explanatory. Like, originally when I was doing perspective, I didn't get it at all. Like, I'd watch videos and I'd still be confused, but all you're doing is taking into account that the thing you're drawing has mass, it has volume, it has many dimensions to it. That the thing that you see projected onto the paper, it's not the full object. So you essentially have to give the illusion or the implication that there's more that you aren't seeing. I mean, duh. So when it comes to 1-point perspective, it's not difficult. It's the easiest amongst all of them, because all you have to really worry about is 1 point. You only have one vanishing point. But also to inform you, when it comes to drawing things in perspective and truly grounding them, the only really tools you're using are a vanishing point. My handwriting's a little bad. You need a vanishing point, a horizon line. Yeah, you can't copy off notes from me in class because my handwriting is bad. And in some way, shape, or form, you also need grid lines. These come from the vanishing point. Grid lines. These are basically all the tools you need to set this up. Anything after that, you're essentially just placing objects amongst the grid. But remember, the grid is not 2D. So there's parts you gotta add. So let's say I take a rectangular composition like this. And I'm only gonna use one vanishing point. So I'll place it here. Let's place it high. Let's place the vanishing point high, and typically with your horizon lines, you're gonna just, draw them right through. From here on, when it comes to establishing your grid lines so you can get a better idea of how things are gonna sit, you just kind of make sure that all the lines that you place go through this vanishing point. They have to. Especially when you're just starting out perspective, you have to get used to knowing where these lines are coming from. That they all at some point converge in the distance. So maybe I place some more down on the bottom. Maybe I place some more on top. Now, to let you know, when you place your vanishing point, not your vanishing point, your horizon line. Let me write that so I don't make that same mistake. Horizon line. When you put down your horizon line, be mindful of where things sit in relation to it, whether it's above or below. Because if an object sits above the horizon line, you'll see the bottom. That'll be evident in whatever you're drawing. See, but if it is below, then you're gonna see the tops. Think of the vanishing point as kind of like the midpoint of what a camera is gonna capture. Kind of think of it as moving the camera. I think that's something Kim Jong-gi spoke about, how he can kind of move the camera around in his head to get better perspective. If it's below this line, it's below the eye line. If it's below the eye line, you're above it, so you can see the tops, the bottoms, the sides. But if you're below the horizon line, you're gonna see beneath the objects. You'll just see the bottoms of it. And for instance, with this grid I drew, I'll get a sketch pen out instead of like my blue pen, so that you can kind of see where I'm gonna mark. If I wanted to draw just cubes in perspective, I could use these lines not only to keep my lines straight, but I use them to establish how the lines will disappear off into the vanishing point. So you have the face of the square. You can just place a bunch of faces and I'll just place them in different spots just so you get an idea of it. They may be hard to see. I'll shade them in a little bit so you can see the faces. Now, obviously, after I make my point perspective videos, I'll give you perspective tips like how to control line weight and opacity and foreshortening and things of that nature. I'll probably talk about those things as well. I may touch on them in these videos, but for a full video on like those things separate than the point perspectives, I'll make them if you do want them. With the cubes I have placed, I have the faces of them, but remember, we're in a three-dimensional space. The key is to convince the viewer that this is a three-dimensional space. And like I said, this horizon line acts as your eye line. Anything below the eye line is anything below the horizon line is below your point of view. So this square falls below that line. I can see the tops. So all I have to do is establish another horizontal line. I'm getting tongue-tied. You establish a horizontal line here for the back of the square, and you just make lines to connect it along the grid that you've placed. You don't have to do it all the time amongst lines you place in the grid. It doesn't have to adhere to that strictly, but when you're just starting out, it may be easier that way. Like, I kind of just place the grid lines so I can kind of get an idea of, okay, this is the direction the line will go towards the vanishing point. Like, I use it to kind of know where I'm going to place my lines. But if you're just starting out, you can use them as kind of an anchor point for your physical, drawings, for your actual pieces. This one falls below the horizon line, so you've got the tops. You can see the top. But it's still more aligned to the center of this composition, the vertical center. So you won't see its right side. My right, its left, I guess, if this is the face. This one, it isn't. We'll name him Randy. Randy here, this square, Randy, he a little evil, he a little dastardly. Now, while his top aligns almost perfectly with the horizon line, so I don't really have to worry about drawing it, its side does. It's not as close to the center as Kimball. I'll name him Kimball. Yeah, Randy, Marcus, and up here is Clancy. There. Okay, so you see Randy here. He's in line with the horizon line, but he's not aligned closely with this center that I drew down. So you still have to establish that side. So I'll just draw a vertical line along the grid that I've placed, and I'll connect the vertices of this bottom line with this line here that I've already established as a part of the face. Because a lot of the times what you're doing is essentially just connecting spaces. Like, you want to take a square and make it 3D, well, you draw a second square and connect the corners or vertices. I haven't taken geometry in a minute, so I forgot the terminology, but basically that's how you do it. I guess theoretically, if you wanted to make a 4-dimensional object, you would take another cube and you would as well connect the... Wow, that actually is unfathomable. We're not going to touch on 4-dimensional stuff. I'm not that kind of teacher. But we're going to go back to our cube friends down here. Now, we haven't touched on Clancy or Marcus, but we have to. I'm going to zoom in because I feel like maybe you guys can't see. There we are. So now here we have Kimball, Marcus, Clancy, Randy. Now, Clancy, while I did draw his face, you could almost just put that as a bottom. But here's its face right here that I drew. It's very close to this center line that essentially just dissects the entire composition. So all I'm going to do is to add the bottom to Clancy to make him seem 3D. I'll just add another horizontal line above the horizon line, and then I'll connect the face of the front to the edge of the back. And then I'll just shade in the bottom. And you can add some lines to establish that side, but it'll just disappear in the distance because of how close it is to the center. Now we have Marcus. We almost left him out. Now, Marcus is far below the horizon line, so you're probably going to see the most of his top than anyone else's. More than Clancy, more than Randy, more than Kimball. So I'll just draw, like I said, another horizontal line along the grids. to get it to work. Now, Marcus's edge is aligned with the center, so I don't really have to worry about depicting the sides of him. But just to show you how that can be done, I'll draw a smaller box here. Name him Bobo. You got Bobo, the smallest box of the bunch. Now, Bobo isn't close to this center line that, dissects the vertical composition, and it's far below the horizon line. So I'm just going to make some lines leading to the vanishing point for Bobo. And then wherever I feel comfortable, I'll establish vertical lines and cut off those guides. So now you've got Bobo, this small, long, rectangular prism. Bobo. That's Bobo. But if this little lesson didn't teach you a little something, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to make a sketch. It's not going to be pretty, but I'll make a sketch to kind of show you how I would use perspective, basically. So I don't want to waste a page. I'll just draw a little border here and we'll get to it. And so now we have this square composition. If I wanted to use this to show you how to use perspective with just one point, I gotta place first step, place vanishing point. Now you may think, well, why not the horizon line first? I mean, you can. It's not like I locked you up in my room and told you this is how you have to do it. But for those who may be wanting to learn, I think you should start with that. Placing your vanishing point. Let me zoom in on that. Yeah. You're gonna place your vanishing point. So amongst the composition I have now, I'll place it. I'll actually place it. Well, I don't want to get too crazy, so we'll place it dead center. There's my vanishing point. And now my horizon line, it technically can go more than one way. So like with the vanishing point here, I can have my horizon line go straight through horizontally, like normal. A lot of my drawings are composed like that, and they still look amazing. Simple composition, but it works every time. You could have your vanishing point here and maybe set your horizon line there. You could play with how it's composed. So maybe the vanishing point is higher and the line is up there. Maybe you want to draw the sky and you don't really care for the ground, so you place it here and you go through it that way. So now you have more space above the horizon line than below. Granted, once you get into like more points and like more dynamic angles, it'll probably get a little more confusing. But once you know how to place your grids and your guide lines, it should be a lot easier. I hope that makes sense. Now, obviously, where this vanishing point sits, it won't always be dead center. Sometimes in a composition, it'll even be off to the side. Like it'll be like right here. And then like the lines will come out this way. So it won't always be dead center. Don't think that you have to adhere to that. Kind of just think of it as cropping a photo. Technically, where you take the photo is going to be dead center, I guess, and it just depends on how you crop it. So like maybe the vanishing point could even be high in the corner. There's different ways to compose your vanishing points and grid lines. But I'll add the grid lines to some of these so you can kind of see how I do it. I just kind of make sure they're coming out of the vanishing point. They all come from it. And then I'll probably add some more horizontal lines to give the idea depth. See, this already looks like a plane as it's just a bunch of tiles. I can add it here. And I got all that big old open space, you got a box right there, and got a box right here in the foreground, so it's darker, its line art is heavier. See, this already looks 3D, bro. See that? All I did was add two objects, some grid lines, and it already looks very three-dimensional. You could do this with this as well. And keep in mind, you're also learning with me. This is essentially my perspective practice. You could also do a composition like this. It could get crazy. You could do, well, obviously you can't do it like that, like this. You get what I'm going for? So I'll just put a regular line through this big one I'm going to do with you, and you can follow along. So hopefully by now you have your box placed and your horizon line, your vanishing point, kind of like mine. It doesn't have to be exactly, but you can follow along. So let's say I wanted to draw a kitchen. Let's say I wanted to draw a kitchen. That'll help since I'm going to place very defined grid lines. It could just be tiles. The first thing I'm going to do is just kind of establish the bottom of the horizon line because I want to establish the ground. That's how I go for it. You don't have to, but that's how I do it. I establish where my ground will be. So I'll just have a line that goes dead center. Not dead center, but dead vertical down from the vanishing point. I have some lines that come out diagonally to truly get to the bounds of things, the edges of the composition, the front. Have some more towards the edge. Have some maybe going this way. This might be a very large kitchen. Maybe some more just to really hone it in, really tie things through. Maybe I add some more like this, just some vertical lines. The vertical lines don't have to, the horizontal lines don't have to adhere to the vanishing point. They're not coming from the vanishing point. They're just going to be straight. There's a lot of times where in certain compositions, the only lines you're really worried about are the ones that come from the vanishing point. These are still just going to be horizontal. Because if they kind of adhere to some strange warping system, you wouldn't get a composition like this that actually looks like it has depth. So these horizontal lines would just be regular horizontal lines. That's something I didn't understand in the beginning. Maybe for you, you may have gotten that, but for me, I didn't get it. But there, you got some very bad and very wide kitchen tiles. If I wanted to place some objects just to get started, I'd say in the background. No. I think this would be an open air kitchen. So I could go this way. Maybe over here I add a fridge right here. So not on the horizon line, but just in front. Like it's closer than anything else. Now I'm drawing a fridge from memory, so don't make fun of me. But here's a fridge. Here's fridge. Remember, I've given you the face of the fridge, but this is a three-dimensional space. So I have to show you this is a three-dimensional space. So I'm just gonna draw some lines leading to the vanishing point. We're gonna connect these sides facing it to this one. So you don't have to worry about this side at all. It's just the side facing the vanishing point will be the ones you have to actually transcribe into 3D, you know what I mean? So you just add a vertical line to the guidelines you placed, and then you add these lines of depth to establish and reinforce the illusion that this fridge is 3D. And I'll just shade the side to make it seem like it's actually present. It's crudely drawn, and it's still a little flat and boring, but it's now three-dimensional. And the context of objects around it will kind of help. Maybe I want to add a counter. So I'll kind of just maybe add a horizontal line above the horizon line, vertical line right here, and the horizontal line right there. I've got a counter. Maybe I add some cabinets. Funny little counter, funny little cabinets, but it gets the job done. Now, what did I tell you last time? I now have the face of a countering cabinets, but I need to convince the viewers that this is three-dimensional. It has weight, it has depth, it holds a place in space. So I just draw some imaginary grid lines to my vanishing point. I'm making them light so that you don't really see it. And I'll just draw a vertical line down the lines I set. Maybe add some more to truly supplement this. There, now I have just a random counter here. I want to play with the foreground some, kind of switch it up so that y'all know how to deal with that. Maybe in the front, I want to add a table here, just a table. We'll make it square because it'll be easier to compose that. Here in the foreground, I went over my grid line, so I went over this one, and I just established a horizontal one. I'm gonna go down just a little more vertical, and then again I'll establish another coming from the vanishing point. Now I have the very edge of my table, and I'm gonna shade it so that you can tell which is the edge and which is the top. Before I get into the line weight and the foreground stuff, I'm gonna make sure I finish my table. So let's add some legs. It has to stand on its own, right? Just some vertical lines to get it started. Since the table legs are gonna be out of frame for like the bottom of it, you don't really have to do too much for them. You just make some vertical lines and you shade them need be. So this table's pretty easy. But just for sake's sake, we're gonna thicken this outline of the table so that you understand it's in the foreground. It's an object that is closest to the viewer. So I'm gonna thicken the lines up some. Not like how I typically would, not too powerful, but just enough to understand this is far up. It's not bigger than a refrigerator, but it is closer. Now something I also do as well is I'll like make objects in the foreground darker. Technically this is a video on perspective, so I can teach you this. So I'll make some foreground objects darker to truly sell it home that, hey, these are real objects, they exist in a three-dimensional space, they adhere to some law of physics, and they have some sort of rule to them. And I'll just kind of shade this little under part. You can even use this three-dimensional space to your advantage when it comes to the shading. So there, now you have a table. I think I also want to add an object above the horizon line. So we're gonna add a chandelier. So I'm just gonna make a rectangle here. And I'm gonna just draw like a cube in space, because I'm gonna start off with breaking it down to its essential shape. Since the chandelier I'm gonna draw is kind of complex, I'm gonna just put down a little rectangular prism, big old box in the sky. Now remember, you got the face, I drew the bottom because these lines kind of adhere to the vanishing point. I was a little loose with them, but they give off the implication pretty closely. Remember, they come from the vanishing point. And I'll just shade the bottom. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna kind of, add some panes, because it reminds me of a chandelier I've seen when I was quite young, that my auntie used to own. It's quite beautiful. I might even reference it in my comic Eat Kings. You should read it on Webtoon. It's pretty good. It's about two fast food workers essentially fighting for their life and having a fun time doing it. But they live in a city that's basically ruled by corporate overlords. Maybe I add, this to show that it's hanging from something, a ceiling. So this, maybe a chamber that goes down and also has panes of its own. And then a little bottom part, you know what I mean? It may be one of the lowest chandeliers I've ever, actually, no, there's a lower chandelier in my dining room. Not my dining room, I don't own this place, I live with my parents. But you know what I mean. You get what I'm saying. But hopefully this tutorial helps you, and this drawing along thing can kind of get you a better idea of learning perspective. But you kind of see how the chandelier is kind of coming into view. It may be harder to see, I kind of want to add a foreground object that basically just invades space. So we're going to add we're going to make this into a doorway. So I'm going to have some lines basically bombard not only the bottom of the horizon line, but the top as well. That way this object is closest. It takes up space before the entire composition. Like it breaks the bounds. It can't be contained by the composition you, the artist, have set, because it it's beyond that. Now, if I wanted to make it a doorway, that wouldn't even make sense with how the table is, but we'll just keep this here. And you can kind of thicken the outline to truly give the impression that it is there. I'll probably make it even darker than the table to show that it's closer than the table. It's even closer. Like, bro, you're staring at it. You know what I'm saying? Like, but while I'm sitting here drawing this and you're working on your perspective, tell me in the comments what your favorite song to listen to is. Like, while you're drawing. You see how this scene has already come together and all I've done is place like 5 objects in perspective? Like just the idea of making them seem like they have mass, that they have volume, it creates a scene that seems familiar. It's not that hard. I thought it was a lot more difficult when I first started. If you truly want to make this feel like a room, I'd probably add some elements of like a ceiling. So like probably make some guidelines that lead to the horizon, the vanishing point. Just for it. But a lot of the times you can kind of stop it. Like, let's say I want the ceiling to stop here. I'll just stop it there. And so all the lines now will go downward. So let's say I just make this into like a big old window. You know, there's a window. There's a door here. Big old double doors. Now with these objects, they basically fall past that vanishing point, so you don't really have to worry about the 3-dimensionality of them. In fact, keeping them not 2D, but keeping them flatter than the rest makes the others pop out more. So keep that in mind. You got some doors here. Maybe we put a window here, you know. I'll probably add like a little ceiling light, even though, yeah, we have a chandelier and we're rich and we're bougie, but I'm gonna add a ceiling light. Just cause. Add a ceiling light. Cause even sometimes now I get confused on like how to compose an object. So make sure you keep referencing your vanishing point. Don't forget it. Don't ever think you're too good to not use your vanishing points. We're not all Kim Jong-gi, especially not me. Maybe just some elements of the ceiling that can kind of, you know what I'm saying? I'm gonna shade it some just so it can kind of look different than the rest. It's not like disturbing the image. It's not making it hard to read. You know, things of that nature. So sometimes I just add cross-hatching where I need it so that things can be differentiated. I told you, this was gonna be a pretty big kitchen. I'm gonna add another counter right along it, you know? And maybe we can even add like some appliances, like here's a coffee maker or something. Here's a, I don't know, a cabinet. Pretty, this fridge isn't even against the wall. Whatever, we're just gonna call this a cabinet, you know? I made it taller. And maybe you have like, I don't know what people have in their kitchens. Let's just put like, I don't know, big old deep fryer. Yeah, deep fryer. And maybe just to add some more objects to really sell the idea of this being a 3-dimensional landscape. Or just to really indulge in this little sketch I got going, because I kind of find it fun. Though, not gonna lie, these objects are sitting funny. This camera is sitting low. Like, the implication would kind of be that this table sits below. Would it? It's not that it doesn't work. Does the composition work? I mean, then again, that counter is just sitting in space, so I don't think it's the composition that's the issue. It's just that I drew the kitchen with strange architecture. I don't even think this is a perspective issue. It looks funny because I placed a counter in the center of a kitchen. Not even against a wall, just like an island. That works amazing. That'll be an island. And this will be a shelf back here. stuff on it. Like cereal boxes. What's up, y'all? I figured out what the weird thing is. The weird thing is that my horizon line is just really high. And so I have a lot of objects that are sitting on the ground that aren't that tall. So it does look a little odd. But I think that's what it is. And probably how I have them positioned. I'm not like a master at this. But I do hope this video helped you out. And if there's anything that was unclear or things you may be still wondering about, comment them below and I'll talk about them in my video on 2-point perspective, and then I'll teach you 2-point perspective in that video. But thank you for watching. Please read my comic E-Kings. Actually, you know what? You're going to see my face. You need to read my comic E-Kings on Webtoon. I am working on the chapter. I'm taking my time. It was supposed to come out a while ago, and I wanted it to come out this week, but if I still have a job, then I got to go to work, and I can't just work on it. But I'm taking my time, and it will come out. I promise you that. But read my comic E-Kings. Follow me on Twitter. I'm gonna try and actually get more consistent posting my sketches there so that you can see that I'm doing my daily drawings as well. I think that's actually all I have to say to you. Let me know how you feel in the comments. And I won't hold you for too long. You know, you gotta make your daily doodle. So get in the green.
I feel it. Honestly, go. Can't say how I'm feeling inside. I wanna be sealed, but got too much pride. I wanna be sealed, but I'm really here. Don't really like here, but I tell you I tried. I did everything else but cry. I done smoke all my weed, young nigga on fried. You can see all this shit in my eye.